Hello, and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask, what moves us? Or more accurately, what's going to move us in future?
We look at debates, themes, and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of What Moves Us. Who we got on the line today?
Hi Liam, Joanna, your partner in crime.
Woohoo! And you are still in Scotland?
I am still in Scotland.
And we also have...
Hi both, I am Chris Jones, so I am the Strategy and Business Delivery Lead at Heathrow Express.
And for anyone who doesn't know, Chris is an old friend of the Rail Innovation Group since he was a munchkin. Pleased to see he's at Heathrow Express helping to transform and improve journeys. So the conversation today is going to be a little different. We're talking about an event coming up in December 9th, which will be the Heathrow Express Supplier Challenge, an opportunity for digital and other suppliers to pitch their ideas direct to the railway. So we're going to go through the whys and the hows on the call today. But before we do, let's just have a little bit of a introduction. So Chris, tell us about Heathrow Express.
So Heathrow Express is essentially the only direct rail service to Heathrow Airport. We've been going for a little over 25 years now. We go from London Paddington into Heathrow Airport. So we've got two stations there. We run every 15 minutes. We are clock-faced, so we offer that reliable, consistent service. And our aim is to offer a slightly better service than you would get on a usual commuter train like the other two services that service Heathrow.
When you say slightly better service, what does that mean?
So in terms of the service offering, it's a much more premium offering. So the other services that serve the airport, you've got London Round, Piccadilly Line, and the Elizabeth Line, which are great both services. I've worked on them in the past, in my past life as an engineer. But Heathrow Express is much faster. We have a much better customer offering on both the trains. We offer a first class option, which is called Business First. And as I said, we're the only service that is direct to the airport. We're purpose-built for essentially airline passengers to get between central London and the airport.
Right. And then how big is the operation?
How big is the operation? So it's a lot smaller than people would think if you compare us to other train operating companies. So overall, we've got a little over 100 staff. The vast majority of those are frontline staff. So we have, I think it's around the 85 mark of frontline staff. So there are service and sales ambassadors in our airport terminals, both landside and airside, dotted around Paddington Station and around our stations at the airport, as well as on our trains, selling tickets and offering advice to our passengers. In terms of the rest of the business, we've probably got, it's around the 20 mark, potentially 30. We fluctuate that run the core business. So that's everything from myself doing the long-term strategy. We have people looking over the safety side of things. We have quite a large commercial team because we have to do quite a lot of advertising, promoting, and business with other organisations, such as bolt-on travel, tours, things like that. So it's quite a small outfit, which really surprised me when I joined. I thought I was joining part of a train operating company. I didn't realise I would be in the core of what is essentially the entire company. So it's quite a fascinating environment to operate in.
So you're a mover and a shaker in the business.
I'd like to think so. That's partly what was brought in for. So proof will be in the pudding. But
So what do you move and shake then?
so my responsibility is the long-term strategy of the business itself. So I came in around 4 months ago. Previously, I was at the Department for Transport for around 6 years, doing an array of things from rail infrastructure through to international negotiation, various policy pieces and legislation. So it's a really fascinating time to come in now because I previously worked on quite a lot of the rail legislation that's going through now that's really going to shake up the industry. So now coming into a train operating company, it's really useful to be able to see both sides of that. In terms of what I focus on, so there's a couple of key points. So it's the day-to-day operation of the railway is one of them, but the other one is where are we going? So it's not a secret that our track access agreement is an agreement that is time-bound. So it's about what does Heathrow Express do beyond the next agreement, hopefully our track access agreement with the Department for Transport and Network Rail, or whatever they may become, is extended. So it's about what do we do when we get there and how do we make sure that continues and what does that future look like. On top of that, I lead a team that focuses on an array of things. So we've got strategy implementation and change management. So for instance, an example recently is we've changed our return fare. It's gone up in price slightly, but in fairness, we haven't increased our prices in around 8 or 9 years, and it's only a marginal increase. It will make a massive difference to the business, but passengers are still making the saving on their return compared to 2 singles. But in order to do that process, it's a huge amount of work. Everywhere across all of our infrastructure, our programming, all of our websites, all of our partners where we list, even just the text string return fare is an enormous piece of work. So we have a part of our team that focuses on what does that process look like. And it's not just about the return fare, it's about any change we do. How do we implement that to make sure that everything is consistent and seamless for our passengers? I then have part of my team that looks over capital projects. So everything we need to do to keep the business running and improve the business. So that's things like large scale from our office move, building new accommodation within the airport to make us more efficient, more sleek in our operations, all the way through to just rebranding of assets, as well as small pieces that they're relatively small products, but in terms of the equipment that our service and sales ambassadors, our frontline staff use, just the redesign and procurement of those items, rolling them out. So part of us look after that. And then a large part of my team is the colleague and community engagement. So we are quite a large frontline heavy organization in that respect. And as with many organizations, that in the past, there's been very much an us and them culture of the frontline versus the management. And I'm working really hard to break that down and improve those relationships. So part of my team, we do a huge amount of initiatives, engagement staff, getting us all together. So most recently, we've had World Food Day, where we encourage people from all over the business, from all different backgrounds, to come together, bring in some food from their culture. And it was incredible. Some of the food was unreal. I had the Goan food was the best. And I was unfortunately in Paris, so I missed it. We also had the People Roadshow, where we brought everyone together to basically show people that there's a future in the business, help them develop their careers with us. And it's something we do see quite often. Quite a lot of our senior management now started on the trade. So it's great that we're perpetuating that. But in terms of the community, we do a huge amount of work in Paddington. So since our inception as Heathrow Express, we've partnered with what was called the Paddington Partnership, but they're now called Grand Union, and they do a huge amount of community work around the Paddington area. We support them financially, but we also engage in quite a lot of their events, like litter picking along the Grand Union Canal, things like that. And most recently, I have sponsored a under-8s football team in the Ealing area called Pitshanger FC, who are in an FA league. And yeah, it's great to just be involved in the community in that way. We're going along to the games. We've got adult-sized kits, so we can help with training. It's really interesting.
So it's quite a wide-ranging role then.
Yes, and it's very different than what I've done in the past. So I found it fascinating. I've been here for 4 months, and it was quite a steep learning curve, but it's what I've been looking for. I think it's good for me, and it's really interesting to be able to get hands-on with so many parts of the business. So other people at my grade, if we want to use that term, they have a specific area of focus, whereas my job is essentially to try and glue that together and try and make sure that what the entire business is doing leans back into the actual overall business strategy that was published last year, and then to look to develop that for the future as well to make sure it's still fit for purpose.
I just want to go back as well to something you said about, sort of like your market and the marketing and that. I mean, sort of like, because who are your customers? Because obviously you mentioned that you're the only dedicated rail line to Heathrow, but obviously that competition has opened up with with the implementation of, or the opening of the Elizabeth line. So we've got the Piccadilly line and the Elizabeth line as well. So who chooses to use Heathrow Express, and why do they choose it?
So that is something that has changed massively since COVID, if I'm entirely honest. So our passenger base it's the vast majority of it is people traveling to or from the airport for travel, or people who work there. We carry quite a lot of staff on our service, which really helps in meeting mode share targets set by the government. What we've seen since COVID changed, though, is the airport passengers as a whole, of which ours are a subset, after COVID, about 70% of our passengers are now actually leisure passengers, not business. So before we had a core business market. Now that's shifted. Now that's meant we've had to change our offering essentially. And what we really need to be careful of here, and it's something we struggle with the wider industry, is Heathrow Express passengers they're not rail passengers. They're people who get trains, but they're airline passengers. They're people who are either getting to the airport to work at the airport or people who are starting their holiday. And that's something we really try to do, is that Heathrow Express is an extension of Heathrow Airport. Your holiday starts at Paddington, and that's really what we want to offer. But airline passengers, they want different things. Compared to usual commuters, they need more space for luggage. They need ease of transfer. They need better wayfinding. Perhaps they don't speak English as a first language. Perhaps they need different payment methodologies because their contactless cards don't work in the UK. Those are things that we offer. We also, because we're direct, we don't pick up other types of passenger along the way. So not only are our airport passengers not being frustrated by commuters and leisure passengers who are just out for the day, that it works in the opposite direction as well. We're not clogging up useful commuter trains that people need to use to get to work or to go about their daily life with people with loads of suitcases and luggage bags. So that is where our difference is. We have dedicated luggage space on the trains. We have information on the trains. So we have digital media screens that show you all the upcoming departures, the terminal you need to go to, whether you're on time, hopefully you're not delayed. But then conversely, if you're going back in the other direction towards Paddington, it will show you all of the upcoming rail connections from Paddington, including Elizabeth Line and the other tube lines there. So it's really about offering that different set of information to the passengers to make the journey as seamless as possible between the airport and London.
And
So is that... Sorry, Liam. Go on.
well, no, I was just going to ask about well, probably in the future is involving expansion. Is how important are you to expansion?
It's really important because, so Heathrow Express, to set the scene in terms of the organisation, we are a separate legal entity to Heathrow, but we are a wholly owned subsidiary, and we offer a number of things that the other rail providers cannot in that space. So as part of expansion, it's really important that we can get more people to the airport using public transport. So I think the target is, I think it's 40 million extra passengers will be travelling to the airport by public transport. Now, I would hope all of those reduce HEX every year, but I can't see that being the outcome of this. But in terms of what we control in that, all of our staff, so for reference, around 8,000 people work for Heathrow Airport Limited, around 80,000 people work at the airport itself. It's a city in its own right. That's an enormous amount of people you have to move. Now, if you're a Heathrow Airport or Heathrow Express staff member, you can travel on our service for free, which we will talk about when we come to our problem statements. That is one of the challenges that we need to help streamline. But also, if you're one of the wider people who work at what we call Team Heathrow, so they're all the suppliers, that's all your baggage handlers, all your airline staff, things like that, they get 75% off. So we are able to ensure that a huge amount of the people that come into the airport are able to do it in a sustainable way. And that number of staff is only going to grow as the airport expands. But on top of that, us basically owning those paths in our track access agreement, us being able to set out what our service is, our service offer, and how we run that is a really strong lever in how we can change the service and make the most of it, continue to optimize it to ensure that we are bringing the vast majority of people or the majority of people that are able to use rail to the airport on our service. And that's just the flexibility that the other rail lines or the other rail services to the airport just don't have. They are doing other things on top of bringing people to the airport. So they continuously have to balance their service, whereas we can prioritize ours and specify exactly the people who want to get to the airport.
And should you be wildly successful and have full train, can you expand?
In terms of, can we expand Heathrow?
Your service offering? Like, what can you do to respond to, let's say you do have this huge public transport mode shift. Can you increase the length of your trains or can you have more paths? Like, well, how much control do you have over operations?
So we don't have that level of control, unfortunately. In terms of length of the trains, no, we're 8 cars at the moment. We can split to 4 for efficiency. If we need to, we recently ran a trial on that. But in terms of lengthening the trains, no, that they just physically would not fit in the platforms at the airports, and that is a physical constraint we have. In terms of paths, so at the minute we've got 4 an hour in each way, and that is ultimately up to the Department of Transport and Network Rail in our agreement. I think right now we're not looking to expand in that way, but in terms of capacity on board the train, we have a lot of capacity available already, and that is something we want to build on. We want to increase the footfall because we have the capacity there. I don't think we necessarily need to increase our infrastructure or our rolling stock yet. Not to say that wouldn't be an option in the future. In terms of levers we have in that space, Heathrow own the infrastructure at the airport. Everything beyond the airport junction is ours, so we are able to change that if we want. So, for instance, underneath Terminal 5, when Terminal 5 was built, Terminal 5 rail station as it is, there is actually an entirely empty rail station next to that, behind the false wall, so we're able to double the size of that station should we need to. So there are levers like that exist. In terms of our rolling stock, so Great Western Railway, they operate our trains for us. They are modified Class 387s from their fleet. Now, we've heavily modified them to improve them for our passengers to give that premium feel. But essentially, the day-to-day operation and maintenance of the trains is done under contract by GWR. So again, it really depends on that agreement. It's not to say we couldn't negotiate, you couldn't change that. But right now, as it stands, where our offering is, our flexibility is, we have the capacity on both trains, and it's the level of service that we're able to offer.
So in quite a close future, your trains are actually going to be delivered by the state-owned railway.
Potentially, yes, which makes my job rather interesting right now. So yes, we will be a private company, an open access operator whose trains are in fact operated by DFTO. So yes, and a large number of my former colleagues, which also adds an interesting dynamic to that conversation as well.
Could have a whole new podcast on that one, couldn't we? So when we were talking about the customer markets and sort of like your customers and that, I was going to sort of like segue into sort of like what the main point of the podcast was that we were going to talk about, and the supplier challenge that we are going to be running with you, which we're really excited to do. And I was wondering how important as part of that supplier challenge is it that potential startups and SMEs are going to participate need to be aware of your market and sort of like how you operate and that. How important is that?
Well, I think it's really important. As I said before, it's something the rest of the industry, and that's the rail industry, not necessarily the startup SME market, but people really struggle to understand is our passengers, they're not normal rail passengers, so we are something different. However, we do operate in a rail environment. We're on national rail infrastructure, so that knowledge is also important to us. Where SMEs are important to me is, so as Liam mentioned earlier on, I've been involved with the Rail Innovation Group from my very early days in London. It's probably, I don't know how long Rail Innovation Group's been going back in London.
9 years.
Yeah, so it must have been from the very start, back when they used to still bring Monster Munch. And what I've observed in that is, I've worked with quite a lot of large rail companies as well, is just the flexibility, the ingenuity that SMEs bring to the market. Large established rail companies, they take so long to do anything innovative. They take so long to actually deliver things, whereas SMEs, they come up with new ideas. They look at it from a different angle, and they're able to come up with a product in a matter of weeks in some cases. There is an issue around regulation and getting them onto the industry, but that's where Rail Innovation Group comes in. And it's just, for me, it's really important to have that slightly outside lens look at us, because we are slightly different. They have the knowledge of the rail industry itself, but they're able to approach it in a much more open way and say, look, you are different. Here's what we can do for you. Here's how we can give you ideas. Here's how we can work together. And I think the combination of us being slightly different and SMEs not being locked into what is the traditional railway, I think is probably one of the biggest value points here.
Well, yes, I would also, for a bit of encouragement to the startups, is that, as you mentioned, you're wholly owned by Heathrow Airport, so if they are looking to expand, here's a brilliant opportunity to come.
I'd agree entirely. as I said, we're wholly owned by Heathrow. So if you work with us, it will open you up to the much wider airport. And we have a similar scheme like this for Heathrow Airport Limited itself. It's called Lift Off, and they focus on different themes. But it's something we're well versed on working on with SMEs and with startups. So it's a culture that Heathrow themselves are used to. So getting involved in this event, particularly from the rail space, is a really, really good way to then understand a much wider airport and then also be accepted by us. So I think it's a great opportunity for both sides.
So, Liam, do you want to tell us about the event, when it's going to be held?
Yep.
And where our listeners can get more details about it?
So that's easy. More details, just go to railinnovationgroup.com, and there's a big giant orange button saying our next events, and you'll be able to go to the event. Right, that lists all the details. Feel free to email us, info@railinnovationgroup.com. So we will be starting at Paddington Station on the 9th of December. We are going to take a journey on Heathrow Express, test out the product. Hopefully it's good service that day. Otherwise it'll be minibuses. And then we're going to shoot on over to, I think it's Terminal 3, where your offices are. And then we're going to do a Dragon's Den format through the 3 challenge statements. We'll split it out. Have some time for networking, pitching your product to the panel of experts and potential buyers from Heathrow. A little bit of time for discussion, Q&A, and then it's pretty tight schedule. We're going back on the train to Paddington, where we will seamlessly move into our Christmas networking drinks. So for anyone who wants to come, it's a brilliant networking opportunity because it's going to be a whole afternoon and evening of networking. Potentially you'll see Paddington there wandering around. He's always around, I hear. But yes, it's great.
Will he be wearing his Christmas hat?
Oh, hopefully. But it's a really good opportunity for suppliers to speak directly to a potential buyer and a rail operator. Sometimes it can be difficult to sort of work out who's the person in the organization you actually need to target and speak to, whereas here we've brought them into a room, and so apply and you can pitch directly to them. And Chris will be providing unlimited amounts of Monster Lunch and Curly Whirlies on the day.
Yeah. Well, I'll get that cost per going. It'll be fine. I'll bring back the old
I thought that was the welcome snack on the Heathrow.
Well, a choice. So that's all the details about the event. So, Chris, do you want to talk us through sort of like the challenges that you have and some of the challenge statements that we're going to be exploring on the day that people who register, businesses that register, can pitch to you?
Yeah, so it's no secret we faced some challenges. We faced a lot of competition, particularly from the opening of the Elizabeth line, as you said before. So what we really want to do is try and focus on things that will help us continue to differentiate our service. One of those is actually to do with staff. As I mentioned before, quite a lot of staff use our service to get to and from the airport. Now, what we really need here is a digital solution that enables the seamless staff travel. Now, you could just ask for, just give them a ticket. It's not that simple. Rail tickets, as you all know, is quite a complex arena to operate in. And at the minute, the solution we have is we essentially flash our staff pass at the gates and staff let us through. It's very labor intensive. It takes all the gateman staff away from their duties, and the volume of staff going through it's large. Essentially, it takes up a lot of our gateman staff's time. But not only that, it detracts from the experience that our passengers have because they're having to wait in queues while airport staff are let through. They can't get through. So what we really want to do is come up with a system that enables us to essentially generate tickets for our staff that we can validate who they are, who they work for, and to make sure they do work for Heathrow or Heathrow Express. And we'll essentially let them through the gate line with that staff intervention. Now, it's not that simple. That could be done with a pass system. We need to implement some sort of security feature into this. So either a single sign-on link into our Heathrow network to ensure that they are current staff, and some sort of personal identifier to make sure that if someone were to misbehave, perhaps we might be able to restrict access should that be the case. So it's not as simple as just generating a ticket. So we want to see what's out there in the industry that can basically help us do that. In terms of our differentiators for passengers. What we really want to do is it's to prove, promote, and continue to position ourselves as that smart green choice. When I looked at some of our oldest advertising posters, we actually have one up in our at Terminal 3 office. I think it's something along Heathrow Express, the smarter way to travel. I think that was our tagline probably about 15, 20 years ago. And look, that really is what we are. It's what we want to continue to show. It's our core strength. So the fact that we are faster than anyone to the airport, we're only 15 minutes. The fact we offer much more space, so that's either the luggage space on board the trains, but much more spacious seats. We've got tables. We're not full of commuters, so we want to work out how we can showcase that. And then the final point we really want to look at, or final main point, is this first and last mile connectivity point. So one of the questions quite a lot of, particularly our British passengers, or passengers who are familiar with London, is they say, well, I can only get to Paddington. It's still central London and you can get anywhere from Paddington, but I accept the challenge. I understand it. So it's, what do we do to go beyond that? How do we help passengers continue their journey beyond Paddington? So what are the options available there? They're what we really want to focus on. Then there's a few other areas we were looking at, such as PTI safety. That's a big one at the moment. But I think the core three are that digital solution for seamless staff access to the network, proving and promoting and positioning ourselves in the differentiated service that we are, and then that first and last mile point.
So in my mind, I'm already thinking about potential solutions for all of those things. Just a detailed question on challenge one, which was about the staff access. Is it that the staff have to tap through effectively the Oyster gates to get onto your system? Is that the challenge? Is that the barrier?
So essentially, yes, we don't even have that right now. You have to manually show your pass. We have Aztec readers at the gate line, so it's either that or some sort of tapping solution, because we have full contactless payment card readers as well. We're not really fussed at how you go about that, but what we would like is some form of control over the pass, so we can control which staff have access and when. Essentially, that's the goal of this.
Okay.
So in terms of the type of people you want to an organisation you want to come on day, what sort of suppliers are you looking for? What's going to excite you and come to meet some of those challenges?
I meet an array of suppliers from all across different sectors. I think, well, I'm a former engineer. I really like tech companies. That's what I really enjoy. But there's also the wider policy pieces. So particularly on the improve and promote and position ourselves, I'd be really interested to see what is out there in the marketing space. What are some people doing in other sectors? What can they bring to us that we might not know exists, that we might not know is there? And then in terms of that first and last mile connectivity, there's so many services out there that continuously offer us things, but I want to see what's different. I want to see how you do it. It's on the last point, what we really care about here is, and I'll use an example now. If one of our passengers is going through Paddington, for instance, so they'll arrive in Paddington somehow, they're coming to the airport, you will buy a ticket from a Heathrow Express machine or a Heathrow Express member of staff. Then it's a GWR member of staff who lets you through the gate line. Then on our train, you've got a GWR driver and a Heathrow Express member of staff. When you arrive in the airport, you've got a Heathrow Airport Limited HAL Rail staff operating the gate line there. Then if you have any accessibility requirements, you'll then go into a contract called Wilson James. And what I'm getting at here is we want this to be seamless. That's what 5 or 6 different companies. Any additional services we add in, we want that seamless integration. So it's people who are able to operate in that way. We really want people to make it appear to our customers that it is one single company all the way through. So people who have experience in that space, I'd be really impressed with them as well.
Interesting. Okay. And I was actually going to ask a question about the seamless stuff. Sorry, yes, that was my point. Is in the proportion of customers, is how many of those people are inbound customers versus, as in flying into the country from other countries, or UK people going to Heathrow to leave the country?
It's about 65%, I reckon, at the minute are inbound in comparison. It's No, probably about 60%. It averages throughout the day. We get peaks and troughs. It works out around 50-50, but in terms of our peak times, it would actually be arriving passengers coming in that we see more of in bigger waves.
So is multi-language service important to you?
Yes, it is. It's something I've been looking at recently. So one of the improvements in the capital projects area I'm looking at is re-recording all of the audio on board our trains and changing the LED dot matrix displays. And one of the things I'm looking at is other languages. Now we're time bound, so we're only 15 minutes, so it's hard to cram all that information in multiple languages. But what we're focusing on is just the basics, the welcome, any safety information we're looking at, and doing it multiple scripts, multiple languages. It's something we offer on our ticket vendor machines, which is something that some of our competitors don't. But it is that multi-language thing is something that's really important to us. And we're starting to look at broader markets now. We're starting to look at broader advertising other airports around the world. So it is in English language, but for instance, we advertise in New York in their airports for our service. And we're starting now to look after Asia. So we're doing quite a lot on Chinese social media because we have a huge amount of Chinese inbound tourists, and we're looking at Chinese payment providers, for instance. So having that multi-language support is something that is more and more important to us as we go and look for new markets.
Right. Okay. And then let's just think about, just trying to draw out the key details that the suppliers will be keen to know is, when you get to Paddington, in the physical world, how much influence do you have over what happens once someone leaves your platforms? Or is the solution have to be 100% digital for that last mile part?
So leaves our platforms, not a lot. So once you're beyond the gate line, that is, and it's a network rail station, Paddington. We have some influence, but really not a lot. But in terms of what's on our platforms, we do have a lot. So people have seen recently who've travelled that we, as I mentioned, we had an issue with platform train space. As you said, see slips and falls between the trains. It's very, very infrequent, but it's something we can always improve on. It's common across the railway. But we essentially have the rights to those platforms. We've done a lot of work in terms of, it's really simple things, but giant yellow stickers on the floor that catch people's attention. And we've seen a sharp decrease in these incidents. So in terms of the infrastructure on the platform, we, within reason, as long as it's safe to be in a rail environment, we can implement pretty much whatever we want, as long as we don't upset network rail on their station. So I'd say beyond the gate line, not a lot. It is Paddington Station, that is theirs. But on the platform itself, on the trains, on the platforms at Heathrow Airport and within the terminals, we have very nearly free reign.
So in terms of participants at the Dragon's Den, how fully formed do their ideas have to be? Sort of like, are you looking for as wide a range as possible? So it could be academics or something that have developed something in a lab but haven't been real well tested or something, or does it have to be sort of like something that's ready that can be developed with you because it can be done off the shelf? What are your time frames?
Look, we're interested in everything. I don't think there are any fixed time frames. If there are people who have ready-made products that would solve our problems now, such as the digital ticket solution, if someone has something, I'd be very interested in seeing that, implement that as quickly as I can. But if people do have ideas that can just help us shape a business, continue to promote ourselves, continue to differentiate ourselves beyond the other services, I'm more than happy to speak with people who have ideas at the very early inception and work with them to develop those as well.
Okay. It's good to know, so then they can expand on that and potentially co-create the detailed solution with you. Well, that sounds very encouraging.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Mo.
No, you go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, yeah, that co-creation. I think that adds value for both sides. We've got my side. We really need these problems solving, but on the same time, if you're a startup or an SME that is new to the market, being able to work side by side with us, that's an opportunity for you that, as Liam said, it's really hard to get into other talks, other operators. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us to come together and give each other both the experience that we probably really need.
Yes. And also it further differentiates your service. It's good.
So So I was going into sort of like, into our last questions and that. And I think, probably to a certain extent, that's answered it really, really well, because I was thinking about, the whole culture of innovation within rail and how sort of like, given your past experience, with working with Rail Innovation Group, in the early days, but also your public sector experience, why do you think that culture is really important, and how does that help you develop in your current role as well?
It's important because, well, I'll go back further than before the rail industry. For me, I started in motorsport. I was working in a World Rally Championship, and my first job, I was designing parts for cars that went on to win championships, and we were at the cutting edge. And then, I'll be honest, the reason I ended up in rail was, it's quite a dull reason, but I needed a job in London, and I came to London Underground, and I love London Underground. It has a place in my heart, but I was astounded at how backwards some of the trains are very compared to where I was in that cutting edge well, which is why innovation is so important to me. I've seen in that decade I've been in London, I've seen the technology come on so far, but there's only so far that large tech companies can bring this. What I'm really interested in is seeing what the SME and the startup market can really bring to the industry and bring it back to the cutting edge. In terms of what can it do for me, well, I'm branching out. I'm moving more into the business world. I would like to learn what this is about, and I think if it's very selfish of me, but being able to work with startups and SMEs on potentially bringing products to market, work with them to develop their business alongside ours. Look, it's really good for me. It's a fantastic experience. But in terms of Heathrow Express as well, as I said, we do a huge amount of community engagement. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be charitable work in the local area. If we can engage with local businesses or businesses from across the UK and really help them develop, bring them into the transport market, help them grow, look, it's great learner for us as an organisation, but it's also a fantastic opportunity for that business as well. And it's win-win all around. It's one of the reasons I'm really excited to do this. When I first went to Rail Innovation Group events as this very young graduate just eating all the Monster Munch, I did one day really want to be the person doing an event with Rail Innovation Group and being that person speaking at the table, bringing that company together and making that relationship. And now I finally have that opportunity. So I was really excited for this event.
Yeah, it pays off.
And we're really excited. We're really excited too, and I think it sounds really exciting. It's a really big opportunity, I think, for suppliers to engage with a train operator. So, Liam, remind us how do they register?
They register. You can just go directly to railinnovationgroup.com and press our next events, and it will take you to the list of them. We will be advertising across many channels, so click the link, register, or just get in touch, find out more. We can answer any questions. We do have very limited capacity, so you must register if you want to join us. There is no point turning up on the day. You can turn up for drinks at Paddington afterwards. You cannot turn up and come with us on the train because we have a limited number of seats.
So if you want to be there on the 9th of December, register early.
Yes, register early. Excellent. Well, Chris, that was great. I'm very excited. Less than 2 months.
See you on the Heathrow Express.
Thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Until next time.